In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where civilizations rise and fall like cosmic tides, the Galactic Marine Corps stood as the ultimate symbol of military might. For 3,000 years, they had crushed rebellions, conquered worlds, and made entire species kneel before their technological superiority. Their power armor could withstand nuclear blasts, their weapons could level mountains, and their tactical prowess was legendary across 1,000,000 star systems, but they had never encountered a species quite like humanity. When Earth's first contact protocols failed and diplomatic tensions escalated into open conflict, the Galactic Marines prepared for what they assumed would be another routine planetary subjugation. After all, these humans were a young species, barely capable of interplanetary travel, with primitive kinetic weapons and no energy shields. Their military forces seemed laughably outdated compared to galactic standards. The Marine High Command was particularly amused by intelligence reports about Earth's naval special forces, warriors who emerged from water to conduct operations. In a galaxy where warfare was dominated by orbital bombardments and mechanized ground assaults, the concept of soldiers swimming through liquid seemed absurdly primitive. The idea that these Navy SEALs could pose any threat to genetically enhanced, cybernetically augmented galactic marines in powered exoskeletons was beyond ridiculous. That arrogance would prove to be their greatest mistake. Because while the galaxy had forgotten the true meaning of adaptability, resilience, and raw human determination, Earth's most elite warriors were about to provide a brutal reminder. In the murky waters of an alien world, where technology failed and raw skill mattered most, one Navy SEAL would demonstrate why humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, it was their refusal to surrender, no matter the odds. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous predator isn't the one with the biggest teeth, but the one that never stops hunting. The bridge of the galactic dreadnought Sovereign Might hummed with the quiet efficiency of a war machine that had conquered worlds for millennia. Admiral Vextar of the Kytherian Empire stood before the massive viewscreen, his four arms clasped behind his chitinous back as he gazed upon the blue-green marble that hung in space before them. Earth, the humans called it, such a primitive name for what would soon become another trophy in the Galactic Marine Corps' endless collection of conquered worlds. Admiral, came the synthesized voice of his tactical officer, a cybernetically enhanced Cephirian whose organic brain had been replaced with quantum processing cores 3 centuries ago. The human delegation's final response has arrived. Vextar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Let me guess, Commander 07. They've rejected our generous offer of peaceful integration into the Empire once again? Affirmative. Their message is brief. The tactical officer's optical sensors flickered as he accessed the communication. Quote, "We respectfully decline your offer and request that your fleet withdraw from Earth's solar system immediately." End quote. A chorus of chittering laughter filled the bridge as the various alien officers found the human response particularly entertaining. General Corax, the Drakmarian Marine commander, slammed his massive fist against his armrest, his scaled hide rippling with mirth. At nearly 3 meters tall and weighing over 400 kilograms of pure muscle and bone, Corax was a living weapon of war, his body enhanced with the finest military augmentations the galaxy could offer. "Withdraw!" Corax's voice boomed through the bridge like thunder. "These mammals actually believe they can dictate terms to the Galactic Empire. I've conquered gas giants with more military capability than this backwater mudball." Admiral Vextar turned to face his Marine commander, his compound eyes reflecting the cold light of distant stars. "General, what is your assessment of Earth's military capabilities?" Corax pulled up a holographic display that materialized between them, showing detailed scans of Earth's surface. Red markers indicated military installations, while blue dots represented naval vessels scattered across the planet's vast oceans. Huh. Pathetic, Admiral. Their most advanced fighters are barely capable of atmospheric flight, let alone space combat. Their ground forces rely on projectile weapons that wouldn't scratch our Marines' basic armor plating. And their naval forces, he paused, his scarred face twisting into what passed for a grin among his species. They still use floating metal ships on water. Water, Admiral. As if liquid warfare has any relevance in modern galactic conquest. What about these special forces units our intelligence has identified? Vextar inquired, genuinely curious. The files mention various elite groups. Rangers, Special Forces, Delta Force, and something called Navy SEALs. Corax waved a dismissive claw. Primitive tribal warriors with slightly better training than their regular forces. The most amusing are these Navy SEALs, our scouts reported. Apparently, they conduct operations by swimming through water and emerging to attack targets. Can you imagine? In an age of orbital strikes and plasma bombardment, they're splashing around in liquid like primordial amphibians. The bridge erupted in another wave of laughter. The very concept seemed absurd to civilizations that had evolved beyond the need for large bodies of water, where warfare was conducted in the vacuum of space or on the sterile surfaces of terraformed worlds. Admiral Vextar nodded slowly. Very well. Begin Operation Tidal Subjugation. I want a demonstration of our power that will convince the humans to surrender without requiring us to glass their entire planet. A conquered world is more valuable than a dead one. Understood, Admiral. Corax's eyes gleamed with anticipation. I'll deploy the 3rd Assault Battalion to their primary naval facility in the region they call the Pacific Ocean. A quick strike to eliminate their most important military assets should break their will to resist. As the general stalked off to prepare his forces, Admiral Vextar remained on the bridge, studying the tactical displays. Something about this operation felt different, though he couldn't quite identify what. In his 3 centuries of military service, he had overseen the conquest of 47 worlds, each falling within days or sometimes hours of the initial assault. The pattern was always the same: orbital bombardment to establish superiority, followed by rapid deployment of marine forces to key strategic targets, culminating in the inevitable surrender of the planetary government. The humans should follow this pattern perfectly. They were even more primitive than the Phylaxians had been, and those cat-like beings had surrendered after losing just 2 cities to demonstrative orbital strikes. Surely these mammals would be even easier to convince. Down in the Marine Deployment Bay, General Corax strode between rows of power armor suits, each one a masterpiece of galactic military engineering. The suits stood 3 meters tall, their polished surfaces gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. Each was equipped with energy shields capable of deflecting most known weapons, plasma cannons that could melt through solid rock, and tactical systems that provided real-time battlefield analysis through quantum-linked networks. The Marines themselves were equally impressive. Representatives of a dozen different species, each had undergone extensive genetic and cybernetic enhancement to maximize their combat effectiveness. Enhanced reflexes, improved strength, advanced sensory systems, and redundant organ systems made them nearly impossible to kill through conventional means. They were the apex predators of galactic warfare, and they knew it. Listen up, Marines! Corax's voice boomed across the deployment bay. We're about to conduct a textbook subjugation operation on a primitive world called Earth. Intelligence indicates minimal resistance capability, so this should be a routine demonstration of Imperial power. Sergeant Major Thex, a Mantari whose insectoid features were hidden behind his helmet's faceplate, raised one of his forearms. General, what about local environmental factors? The planet appears to be mostly covered in this substance called water. Is relevant. Corax replied dismissively. Our suits are fully sealed and capable of underwater operation if necessary, though I doubt we'll encounter any significant aquatic resistance. These humans are primitive. Their idea of naval warfare involves floating metal platforms that would be sitting ducks for our aerial units. Another Marine, this one a heavily augmented Vorthax, spoke up. Sir, what about these elite units mentioned in the briefing files? Corax chuckled. Local tribal champions with marginally better equipment. The intelligence reports are quite amusing, actually. Apparently, some of their elite warriors specialize in swimming through water and conducting raids from liquid environments. Imagine that, in the age of energy weapons and force fields, they're still crawling out of ponds like primitive amphibians. The assembled Marines joined their general's laughter. The idea that any primitive could pose a threat to their advanced capabilities was beyond absurd. They had faced down the war machines of the Helican Collective, survived the psychic attacks of the Void Cultists, and crushed the cybernetic hordes of the AI Rebellion. What could a few barely evolved mammals possibly do against such overwhelming superiority? As the Marines sealed themselves into their power armor and began final equipment checks, none of them noticed the subtle tension that had begun to permeate the ship. Admiral Vextar's unease was spreading through the crew, though most attributed it to standard pre-battle anticipation. On Earth, meanwhile, humanity was preparing for the fight of its existence. In secure facilities around the globe, military commanders were coordinating humanity's response to the alien threat. The message was clear: surrender was not an option. At Naval Base Coronado, Master Chief Petty Officer Jack Reef Morrison stood before a holographic display showing the approaching alien fleet. At 38 years old, Morrison was a 20-year veteran of the naval special warfare community, with more combat deployments than most Marines saw in their entire careers. His weathered face bore the scars of countless operations in the world's most dangerous waters. and his eyes held the calm intensity of someone who had stared death in the face so many times that they'd become old friends. "Gentlemen," Morrison addressed the assembled SEAL Team 6 operators around him. "We've got aliens who think they can walk into our house and redecorate. Intelligence suggests they're planning a demonstration strike on naval assets in the Pacific. Their mistake is assuming we're going to fight them on their terms." Lieutenant Commander Sarah Tsunami Chen, the team's operations officer, pulled up detailed scans of the alien ships. "What do we know about their capabilities, Master Chief?" "They've got advanced tech, no question about it," Morrison replied, his voice steady and measured. "Energy weapons, force fields, power armor that makes our best gear look like cardboard. But they've got one major blind spot." "Which is?" asked Senior Chief Marcus Depth Charge Rodriguez, a veteran of operations from the Arctic to the tropics. Morrison's weathered face cracked into the ghost of a smile. "They think water is just an obstacle to navigate around. They've been fighting in space and on dry land for so long they've forgotten that 3/4 of Earth is covered in the most perfect concealment and approach medium ever created. They see our oceans as empty space instead of three-dimensional battlefields." The SEALs exchanged glances. Each man in this room had spent years perfecting the art of underwater warfare, learning to move through water as naturally as others move through air. They could hold their breath for impossible lengths of time, navigate by sound and touch in absolute darkness, and strike from angles that no surface-based enemy could anticipate. "What's the plan?" asked Petty Officer First Class David Kraken Thompson, the team's senior demolitions expert. Morrison gestured to the holographic display, which now showed a detailed map of the Pacific Ocean floor. "They're going to hit Pearl Harbor first, biggest naval concentration on the Pacific. They'll expect to find our ships lined up like sitting ducks, ready for target practice. What they won't expect is for the ocean itself to fight back." As Morrison outlined the mission, thousands of miles above Earth, the alien fleet began its final approach. In the deployment bay of the Sovereign Might, General Corax made his final inspection of the assembled Marines. Each warrior was a walking weapons platform, their armor systems running through diagnostic cycles that confirmed optimal operational status. "Marines!" Corax bellowed. "Today we add another world to the Empire's collection. The humans have refused our generous offer of peaceful integration, so we'll demonstrate the futility of resistance. Remember, we want prisoners for interrogation and enough infrastructure intact to make occupation worthwhile. Try not to level their entire military complex in the first 5 minutes." The Marines laughed at their general's joke, the sound echoing strangely through their helmet speakers. They were confident, professional, and utterly convinced of their own superiority. After all, they had never met an enemy they couldn't defeat through the application of superior technology and overwhelming force. None of them had ever fought an enemy that could disappear into an environment they barely understood, strike without warning from impossible angles, and fade away before retaliation was possible. None of them had ever faced an opponent who viewed the vast Pacific Ocean not as an obstacle, but as home territory. The transport ships launched from the Sovereign Might like metallic thunderbolts streaking toward Earth's blue surface. Their destination, Pearl Harbor, where they expected to find a collection of primitive floating metal platforms crewed by barely evolved mammals who would surrender the moment they witnessed true galactic firepower. What they would actually find was about to redefine their understanding of what it meant to be the apex predator in any given environment. Because in the depths of Earth's oceans, where technology meant less than skill and courage meant more than armor, the galaxy's most elite warriors were about to meet humanity's most dangerous sons. And the aliens were about to learn their first hard lesson about the species they had so casually dismissed. Humans didn't just adapt to their environment. They turned it into a weapon. The alien transport ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their energy shields creating brilliant streaks of ionized air as they plummeted toward the Pacific Ocean. General Corax watched the tactical display from his command ship, satisfaction radiating from his massive frame as he observed the perfect formation of his assault force. 24 dropships carrying the 3rd Assault Battalion's finest warriors, supported by 6 heavy gunships equipped with enough firepower to level a small city. "Target acquisition confirmed," reported his tactical officer. "Human naval assets identified at coordinates matching their Pearl Harbor facility. 37 surface vessels detected, ranging from small patrol craft to large aircraft carriers." Corax's mandibles clicked with approval, exactly as intelligence predicted. The humans have conveniently gathered their naval forces in a single location for easy elimination. Begin the demonstration. The first phase of the attack unfolded with devastating precision. Energy beams lanced down from the circling gunships, striking the outer perimeter of the harbor. Ancient shore batteries that had been hastily retrofitted with modern weapons vanished in brilliant flashes of superheated metal and concrete. The aliens' weapons were so advanced that the human defenses simply ceased to exist rather than being destroyed in any conventional sense. But something was wrong. "General!" The tactical officer's synthesized voice carried a note of confusion that his cybernetic enhancements weren't supposed to allow. "The human vessels are not responding as anticipated." Korax leaned forward, studying the display more closely. The human ships should have been launching aircraft, firing weapons, or, at minimum, attempting to flee. Instead, they sat motionless in the water, like abandoned hulks. "Scan those ships for life signs." "Scanning. Negative, General. All vessels appear to be unmanned decoys. Sophisticated ones, but empty nonetheless." A chill ran down Korax's spine, the first time he'd experienced genuine unease in over a century of warfare. "Where are the real ships? And where are the humans?" His answer came in the form of a massive explosion that bloomed beneath the leading dropship. The transport's energy shields flared brilliant blue as something detonated against its lower hull, but the shields held, barely. "We're under attack," came the panic transmission from the dropship's pilot. "Something just hit us from underwater." "Impossible," Korax snarled. "Our sensors show no submarines in the area." Another explosion, this one catching a different dropship. The pilot's voice crackled over the comm system. "Contact below. I repeat, contact from directly below." "We're taking heavy fire from... I don't know what that was." 3 miles beneath the surface of Pearl Harbor, Master Chief Morrison hung motionless in the water, his rebreather providing silent oxygen while he monitored the aliens' formation through an advanced sonar system that the alien sensors couldn't detect. The device was a marvel of human engineering, not more advanced than alien technology, but designed according to principles that the galactic military simply didn't understand. The aliens had spent millennia perfecting weapons that could destroy planets and shields that could stop energy beams. But they had never encountered a species that had spent thousands of years learning to fight in an environment where energy dissipated harmlessly, and where stealth was measured not by sensor-defeating technology, but by the ability to become one with the surrounding medium. "Depth charge! You seen this?" Morrison whispered into his underwater communication system. Senior Chief Rodriguez's voice came back steady and professional. "Confirmed, Reef. Targets are maintaining formation at 200 feet altitude. Sitting ducks if we can reach them." "Toonami, report." Lieutenant Commander Chen's voice held a note of grim satisfaction. "Decoy fleet is performing perfectly. They're completely focused on the fake targets. Real naval assets are safely dispersed and hidden in secondary positions." President Dr. Morrison allowed himself a thin smile. "Iron fight." The aliens had expected to find Earth-specific fleet gathered conveniently for destruction. Instead, they'd found an elaborate deception, meticulously crafted decoy ships that looked exactly like real vessels on sensors, complete with heat signatures and electromagnetic emanations that perfectly mimicked operational warships. Meanwhile, the real fleet was scattered across dozens of hidden anchorages, waiting for the second phase of the operation. "Kraken, you in position?" "Petty Officer Thompson's voice," came from somewhere in the dark water below Morrison. "Affirmative. Demo charges are set on the harbor floor. Ready to turn this place into a very unfriendly swimming pool." Morrison checked his tactical display one more time. The alien dropships were descending toward the fake fleet, obviously planning to deploy their marines directly onto the decoy vessels. It was time to spring the trap. "All units, this is Reef. Execute Phase 2. Show our visitors why Earth is called the Blue Planet." The ocean erupted. Massive charges detonated along the harbor floor, sending towering columns of water skyward. But these weren't random explosions. They were precisely calculated to create a three-dimensional maze of churning water, foam, and spray that would turn the clear Pacific into an impenetrable curtain of chaos. The alien dropships, caught completely off guard, found themselves flying blind through an environment that their sensors simply couldn't penetrate. Water didn't register as a threat on their tactical systems because their computers had been programmed for vacuum and atmospheric combat. The concept of weaponized ocean hadn't occurred to galactic military planners. "I can't see anything," came the panic transmission from one of the dropship pilots. "Sensors are useless in this, whatever this is." General Korax watched in growing alarm as his perfectly organized assault force descended into chaos. Half his pilots were reporting sensor malfunctions. The other half was struggling to maintain formation in conditions they'd never trained for. Get those ships above the water disturbance. Establish a clear tactical picture. But as the dropships attempted to climb to safer altitudes, the SEALs sprung the second part of their trap. Morrison kicked hard, propelling himself upward through the water with powerful strokes that carried him toward the surface at inhuman speed. His team moved with him, 4 ghosts rising through the depths like predators ascending from the abyss. The aliens had never encountered an enemy that could use water itself as concealment, that could approach from any angle in 3-dimensional space, and that could disappear as quickly as they appeared. Their tactical computers were designed for conventional warfare, enemy forces that approached along predictable vectors, that could be tracked by heat signatures or electromagnetic emissions, that followed the logical patterns of civilized military doctrine. SEALs followed no doctrine except victory. Morrison breached the surface directly beneath one of the struggling dropships, his movements creating barely a ripple in the churning water. The alien transport hung just 20 feet above the waves, its pilot fighting to maintain stability in the chaotic air currents created by the massive waterspouts still erupting around the harbor. With movements practiced through thousands of training dives, Morrison attached a specialized charge to his combat harness and triggered the magnetic launcher built into his gear. The device, originally designed for ship-to-ship operations, sent the explosive package arcing upward with enough force to punch through the dropship's lower armor plating. The charge wasn't designed to destroy the alien transport intelligence. It made it clear that their shields were too powerful for conventional explosives. Instead, it was designed to do something far more devastating, create a breach that would force the ship's automatic systems to land immediately to preserve the lives of the troops aboard. The dropship's collision alarm screamed as the shaped charge punched through its hull and detonated inside the cargo bay. Emergency protocols engaged instantly, forcing the pilot to set down in the nearest suitable landing area, which happened to be the surface of Pearl Harbor itself. Mayday, mayday, we're going down. The pilot's transmission was filled with panic as his ship settled onto the water's surface like a metallic island. Hull breach in the cargo compartment. Initiating emergency landing procedures. Morrison was already gone, vanishing beneath the waves like a ghost. Around the harbor, his team was executing identical strikes against other dropships, forcing one after another to make emergency water landings. General Korax watched his assault force being systematically neutralized by an enemy he couldn't see, using tactics he didn't understand. What are they doing? Why are they forcing our ships to land on water? His tactical officer ran rapid calculations. Unknown, General. But if this continues, we'll have the entire assault battalion sitting on the water's surface within minutes. Then we adapt, Korax growled. Order all Marines to prepare for amphibious operations. If the humans want to fight in their primitive liquid environment, we'll accommodate them. The first dropship's cargo ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss, revealing 24 fully armed Galactic Marines in gleaming power armor. Each warrior was a masterpiece of military engineering, their suits bristling with sensors, weapons, and defensive systems that made them virtually invulnerable to conventional attack. They stepped onto the water's surface with complete confidence, their suits' anti-grav systems allowing them to walk on the liquid as easily as solid ground. Energy weapons powered up with ominous humming sounds as tactical computers began scanning for targets. Perimeter established, reported Squad Leader Vex, his voice transmitted through quantum-encrypted channels. No hostiles detected. Beginning search pattern. That was when the ocean came alive. The first Marine never saw what hit him. One moment he was striding across the water's surface, sensors sweeping for enemies. The next moment, something grabbed his leg from below and yanked him into the depths with tremendous force. His armor's emergency systems activated instantly, sealing the suit and switching to underwater operation mode. But his tactical displays showed nothing but swirling darkness. Contact! Contact! Vex's voice crackled over the comm system. Marine down. Something in the water. 2 more Marines vanished in quick succession, pulled under by forces their sensors couldn't detect. The remaining squad members formed a defensive circle, their weapons trained on the water around them, but their enemy remained invisible. 50 feet below the surface, Master Chief Morrison moved through the water with predatory grace, his movements as natural as breathing. The alien's power armor, for all its technological sophistication, was designed for land and space combat. In the water, it became a liability. The Marine inside was completely dependent on his suit systems, unable to maneuver naturally in the aquatic environment. Morrison had spent 20 years learning to fight in conditions where technology failed and only skill, experience, and raw determination mattered. The alien warrior, for all his genetic and cybernetic enhancements, was helpless in an environment he'd never trained for. The SEAL approached from below and behind, moving with shark-like efficiency. His combat knife, a simple piece of hardened steel that wouldn't register on the alien sensors, found the vulnerable joint where the alien's leg armor connected to his hip section. not to kill, but to disable the suit's mobility systems. The Marine's armor began filling with water as Morrison's blade punctured the seal, forcing the alien systems to initiate emergency surface protocols. As the powered suit rocketed toward the surface, Morrison was already gone, seeking his next target in the dark water below. On the surface, the Galactic Marines were learning the hard way that their technological superiority meant nothing against an enemy that refused to fight by conventional rules. Squad after squad was being systematically isolated and neutralized by fighters they couldn't see, using tactics they didn't understand, in an environment where their advantages became weaknesses. General Korax watched his forces being dismantled piece by piece, his confidence evaporating like morning mist. Recall all dropships. Get my Marines out of that liquid hellscape. But it was too late. The SEALs had turned Pearl Harbor into their personal hunting ground, and they were just getting started. In the depths of the Pacific, Master Chief Morrison smiled grimly as he watched another alien warrior struggle helplessly. In an environment where human beings were the apex predators, the galactic military was about to learn that Earth's most dangerous defenders weren't the ones with the biggest guns or the most advanced technology. They were the ones who had spent their entire lives learning to fight in the places where technology failed, and only the human spirit remained. Admiral Vextar stood frozen before the tactical display aboard the Sovereign Might, his forearms trembling as he watched his most elite forces being systematically destroyed by an enemy that shouldn't exist. The holographic projection showed Pearl Harbor as a swirling maelstrom of chaos, with alien dropships scattered across the water's surface like wounded birds, while their Marines disappeared one by one into the depths. "Status report," he demanded, though his voice lacked its usual commanding authority. "3rd Assault Battalion is down to 60% strength," his tactical officer reported, the cybernetic enhancement in his voice unable to mask the shock in his words. "We've lost contact with 16 Marines. 12 more are reporting critical system failures, and the remaining units are requesting immediate extraction." Extraction? Vextar's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "The Galactic Marines don't retreat from primitive mammals." "With respect, Admiral," came General Korax's voice, over the comm system, transmitted from his command dropship that hovered uselessly above the combat zone. "These aren't primitive mammals. There's something else entirely." 300 feet below the surface of Pearl Harbor, Master Chief Morrison moved through the dark water like a living weapon. His rebreather provided silent operation while his enhanced diving suit regulated his body temperature and pressure, allowing him to operate at depths that would crush an unprotected human. But more importantly, 20 years of combat diving had trained his body and mind to function in an environment where his alien enemies were helplessly out of their element. The latest victim of the SEAL assault floated unconscious in his damaged power armor, the suit's emergency systems keeping him alive while its mobility functions remained completely offline. Morrison had learned to disable the aliens' technology without killing them. Dead Marines told no tales, but terrified survivors would spread stories that would shake the confidence of every galactic warrior who heard them. "Reef, this is Kraken," came the whispered transmission from Petty Officer Thompson. "I've got 3 more tangos trapped in a pressure lock malfunction. Their suits think they're in a vacuum and won't let them surface." "Copy that, Kraken. Tsunami, what's your count?" Lieutenant Commander Chen's voice carried grim satisfaction. 7 aliens neutralized, Master Chief. Their power armor is designed for every environment except this one. In the water, they're not warriors. They're drowning passengers in very expensive submarines. Morrison allowed himself a moment of tactical assessment. The alien Marines were individually superior to any human soldier in terms of raw physical capability. Their technology was centuries ahead of Earth's best equipment. Their weapons could level buildings and their armor could survive direct hits from tank rounds. But none of that mattered underwater. The aliens had conquered the galaxy using overwhelming technological superiority and conventional military tactics. They had never encountered an enemy that could turn the environment itself into a weapon, that could fight effectively in conditions where advanced technology became a liability rather than an asset. "All units, this is Reef. Phase 3 is a go. Time to send a message." On the surface, the remaining Galactic Marines had formed a desperate defensive perimeter around their grounded dropships. Squad Leader Vex swept his energy rifle across the water, his enhanced sensors straining to detect any sign of the enemy that had been systematically destroying his unit. "Contact bearing 270, shouted one of his subordinates, pointing toward a disturbance in the water 50 meters away. Vex opened fire immediately, sending bolts of superheated plasma streaking across the harbor's surface. Where the energy beam struck water, massive clouds of steam erupted skyward, but when the vapor cleared, there was nothing there. Negative contact, he reported, frustration clear in his voice. The humans are using the liquid as concealment. Our weapons are ineffective against an enemy we cannot see. That was when Master Chief Morrison surfaced directly behind the alien squad. He emerged from the water like a primordial sea monster, his blackened diving gear making him nearly invisible against the dark waves. In his hands was not some advanced alien weapon, but a simple combat shotgun, loaded with specially designed rounds. The alien's energy shields were calibrated to stop plasma bolts and particle beams, not kinetic projectiles traveling at relatively low velocity. Morrison's first shot took out the alien's primary sensor array, sending sparks cascading across his helmet's faceplate. The second shot severed the power cables leading to his energy rifle. The third shot punched through a vulnerable joint in his armor, injecting a powerful sedative directly into the alien's bloodstream. By the time the remaining Marines turned to engage, Morrison was already gone, vanishing back into the water before their targeting systems could lock onto him. Squad leader Vex collapsed as the sedative took effect, his armor's medical systems working frantically to counteract the unknown chemical compound. Man down. Man down, came the panicked transmissions from the surviving Marines. The human appeared from nowhere. How did he get past our sensors? General Corax listened to the terrified reports from his elite warriors with growing horror. The 3rd Assault Battalion was the finest military unit in the Galactic Empire, composed of warriors who had faced down the most dangerous enemies the galaxy could produce. They had fought cybernetic killing machines, psychic predators, and energy beings that existed partially outside normal space-time. But they had never fought an enemy that lived in harmony with its environment, that used the planet itself as both weapon and shield. "General," came a transmission from one of his surviving squad leaders, "we need immediate extraction." "We can't fight an enemy we can't see in an environment where our equipment doesn't function properly." "Negative," Corax replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "Hold your positions, reinforcements are en route." But even as he spoke, Corax knew the truth. He could send down every Marine in the fleet, and the result would be the same. The humans had turned the ocean into their personal hunting ground, and his warriors were nothing more than prey swimming in an alien sea. Admiral Vextar reached the same conclusion as he watched another dropship request emergency extraction, its crew of Marines reduced to half strength by an enemy that struck without warning and vanished without trace. "Tactical," he ordered. "Prepare for orbital bombardment. We'll glass the entire harbor from space."
"Sir," his tactical officer responded hesitantly, "orbital bombardment will also destroy our own forces."
"Better a clean death than this humiliation," Vextar snarled.
The Galactic Empire does not retreat from primitive worlds. But before the orbital strike could be authorized, something happened that would change the course of the entire war. Master Chief Morrison breached the surface directly alongside General Corax's command dropship. The alien general watched in stunned disbelief as a lone human warrior rose from the depths like an ancient sea god, water cascading from his gear as he floated effortlessly beside the transport. Morrison's weathered face was visible through his diving mask, and his eyes held the calm intensity of someone who had looked death in the face so many times that they'd become old friends. In his hand was a simple device that Corax's sensors identified as a primitive explosive charge. "General Corax," Morrison said, his voice carried clearly through the water by an acoustic transmitter, "I believe we need to talk." The alien general's enhanced reflexes should have allowed him to eliminate the human threat instantly. His power armor's weapon systems were online. His targeting computers had locked onto the floating figure, and his finger was on the trigger. But something in the human's manner stopped him. This wasn't a desperate last stand or a suicide attack. This was a predator who had systematically dismantled the galaxy's most elite fighting force without breaking a sweat, and who was now offering terms from a position of absolute strength. "You're the leader of this operation," Morrison continued, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded in the world's most dangerous waters. "Your Marines are brave warriors, but they're fighting in my ocean now. I can continue picking them off one by one until none of them make it home, or we can discuss a more civilized resolution to this situation." Corax found his voice with difficulty. You would negotiate? After what you've done to my forces?" Morrison's expression didn't change. "General, I've been fighting in these waters for 20 years. I've faced pirates, terrorists, and enemy nations that most people have never heard of. Your Marines are good, but they're fighting a war they don't understand in an environment they've never mastered. This isn't about primitive versus advanced. It's about who belongs in the water and who doesn't." The alien general looked around at the chaos surrounding his forces, His dropships were scattered across the harbor's surface. His marines were either unconscious or trapped in malfunctioning armor, and his assault force had been neutralized by a handful of human warriors who fought like the ocean itself had come alive. What are your terms? Corax asked, the words bitter in his mouth. Morrison gestured toward the open ocean beyond the harbor. Your people withdraw to orbit. You leave Earth's territorial waters. And you send a message to your fleet that Earth's oceans belong to humanity, and anyone who tries to take them away from us will learn what it really means to be out of their depth. For long moments, the only sound was the gentle lapping of waves against alien hulls. Finally, General Corax activated his comm system. All units, this is General Corax. Begin immediate withdrawal to orbit. Operation Tidal Subjugation is terminated. As the alien dropships began their ascent towards space, Morrison remained floating in the water, watching them go. Around him, the harbor began to return to normal as the charges stopped detonating and the artificial chaos subsided. Master Chief, came Chen's voice over the comm system, did we just win? Morrison looked up at the alien fleet hanging in Earth's orbit, then down at the dark waters that had been his battlefield and his home for most of his adult life. No tsunami, he replied quietly. We just taught the galaxy that Earth has guardians they never expected. The real war is just beginning. But now they know that if they want to take our world, they're going to have to go through the depths of hell to do it. In orbit aboard the Sovereign Might, Admiral Vexstar stared at the blue planet below with new understanding. The humans weren't just another primitive species to be conquered. They were apex predators in an environment that the galactic military had never learned to master. Warriors who had turned their entire world into a fortress that no conventional force could overcome. The invasion of Earth would have to be postponed indefinitely. The Galactic Empire had encountered something that their 3,000 years of military doctrine had never prepared them for. An enemy that didn't just fight for their world, but fought as part of it. And in the depths of Earth's oceans, Master Chief Morrison and his team had proven that sometimes the most advanced technology in the galaxy was no match for the human spirit. Refined by millions of years of evolution and thousands of years of warfare into something that the stars themselves would learn to fear. The galaxy had dismissed Earth's amphibious soldiers as primitive relics. Now they knew the truth. In the depths where technology failed and only skill remained, humanity's warriors were the apex predators of any ocean, on any world, anywhere in the universe.